Thank you guys for coming. This is our Duclos demo space. We've been here for about a little over a year. Bree knows. 2 years we've been here? Okay. Basically, this space is reserved for customers that want to come in and test out lenses on a variety of cameras. This set stays here all the time, so we let people bring in models and whatnot. But yeah, it's mostly for you guys to come and try stuff out. So we figured let's have a dedicated ZEISS day, and we have our guest, Ernesto Lomeli.
Yay.
There we go. And we have a couple questions, mostly softball questions, but just to get an idea of your experience with ZEISS lenses.
Yeah.
So you've shot a lot of projects on ZEISS lenses.
Yeah.
What was your introduction to ZEISS lenses for cinematography?
I think, like, at least people from my era, it was the 10-100 Super 16 or 16
Okay.
zoom.
So you're going way back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So shooting my first projects on those, like my first short film on that beautiful ZEISS zoom,
Okay.
and then upgrading to super speeds slowly when you started shooting things on 35 short ends. And then the whole digital revolution happened, and then you had a Pro 35 adapter.
Oh, geez.
You threw that on a. Oh, I see heads nodding.
Yeah, yeah.
They're slow, and you feel the pain. I could tell.
I'm sure there's a couple of people here that have used a Pro 35.
And so super speeds, and super speeds to this day. I use them at least once or twice a year on a project. There's a look, and sometimes you're talking to a director about a project and you're trying to figure out the look. Do we want to go like vintagey, flary, blah, blah, blah. It's like, let's just shoot on a set of super speeds. You want to be nimble and run around.
Super compact, super fast.
Small camera, set of super speeds, you're going to get something. And everybody always goes, man, one of my favorite projects I shot was on super speeds. Everybody has that story.
Yeah.
And you're just like, then let's just go. One box of lenses, let's go. And there's something beautiful about having like a tiny set of high-speed primes that you can do whatever you want on. They have character, they have grit. They're small, they're lightweight. You stay nimble, and you're going to get something amazing with them. And so, it's great to have stuff like that. But
just that good set, 18 through 85. You're solid.
Yeah, and somehow you're able to tell a whole story with 5 lenses. And I didn't hear anybody complain, I wish I had a 40, Even though I think they made one.
They added a 65 and a wider and longer, that sort of.
But
that 18 to 85 was the core.
Yeah, and it was the core, and it was great. And then I got to use variable primes for a while. So those were pretty cool.
I'm sorry.
They're awesome. They're actually beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lenses.
Good glass, not practical.
They're not ergonomically correct.
There you go.
They're boat anchory, but they're beautiful. They have really amazing characteristics, much different than, it's like the evolution of the super speed, but not quite the ultra prime. Like they still had the same flare characteristics, because the flare characteristics I feel from like the super speeds and the ultra primes are quite different.
Yeah.
One is like this vintagey coating flare, and the other one's more like a veiling, like contrast loss. I feel like our ultra primes, which you can't see the flare until it's like completely overwhelming. So you could do a lot of backlighting with it. With the super speeds, you see the flare the moment you point out the window or the car drives down the street, and they're pretty. Then that's what they are. But the ultra primes, you could still backlight a little more and get away with stuff. There's
always a special place in my heart for super speeds. In fact, we were asking about the Wi-Fi network earlier. Our guest network the network name is 18, 25, 35, 50, 85 because of the super speeds.
Yeah, and it's really sad because the super speeds as they are, they're actually globally falling apart.
Yeah.
At this point. It's not because of the optics. It's the mechanics in them are just disintegrating.
Oh, this would be such a perfect transition to go into servicing lenses, but I won't. So.
But they are, and like even right now, our 35 millimeter super speed that we've had forever is having coating separation issues, and it's just like,
oh yeah,
what do you do? And you're like, I don't know, like what do I do? And it's just like, now that lens has more character, like you have to shoot it at a 2.
That's one way of looking at it.
And it has a new look at wide open,
It's detuned.
It's detuning itself slowly, but it's kind of what you get,
Yeah.
It's like.
So you mentioned the 10-100, the 16 format. Obviously, that's film. You're primarily using that on. Is that tell us about your path into cinematography and how that came about. Was it traditional? Was it non-traditional?
As soon as I finished high school, I went to film school.
Okay.
Like I in high school, I was lucky enough to have a high school that had a photography department or a class. I had a class in photography, and we would develop, and there was a little darkroom in there. I would spend as much time as possible in the darkroom.
Nice.
And
so that was sort of your introduction to that creative process.
Yeah, and I actually thought I wanted to be a stills photographer, and then I got accepted into the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and I took a cinema class along with all my fine art photo classes, and I really liked it because my first assignment was working with a group of people. Because when you're in high school and your photo class is like, here's your assignment, go shoot a photo essay on this, and you're just adventuring on your own and like, spiraling downwards in your melancholy creative ideas, right? And in film school, it was like, well, everybody has their own job, and you guys are all collaborating on something.
You have to work together.
This is so complicated, you can't do it on your own, so you have to depend on others.
Yeah.
So you have to like communicate your idea. Everybody has to agree your idea is actually decent. I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I just quickly ventured into the photography part of storytelling.
Nice.
Of motion for it, storytelling. So
it has so you have dual citizenship, I believe. Has that been a benefit? Has that been a challenge? How has that influenced or affected your career as a cinematographer?
So I was lucky enough to come to the United States and continue my education here from Mexico from high school. But most of my family's still in Mexico. So I'm one of those border kids, and there's a lot of people that grew up on the border where you would be living in San Diego and you'd drive 15 minutes to go see your cousin in Tijuana. And then back in the day, the lines weren't long. There was no, the immigration issue wasn't such a big deal. So they really were sister cities. They were like, you can just quickly go and come back.
Yeah,
hop over. It was actually easier to go from San Diego to Tijuana than to go from here to Santa Monica. It's like that sounds insane.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you just kind of grow up in a binational world where the radio there, you're getting radio stations from both countries, in both countries. Like you could pay in dollars here and in the border. Like it's just, and culturally, it's like you're getting all the TV stations from everywhere. You'd watch cartoons in English and in Spanish. Things would be broadcast. And so it's just what you know. It wasn't anything different. Like you would think as a child growing up, the whole world was like this. That it was this like hodgepodge mixture of these cultures. And little did I know, like you even just go as far as LA and it's not this
different.
Like, it's not a spectrum, it's like a line, and it's an interesting way of growing up and seeing the world, because you really do think it's all Benetton colors and things are mixed and the world is really all mixed up. Because the border is just a line that you cross, and you could cross it every day, but then you go a little bit further away from it, and you're starting to see that there's a defined cultural line, there's a defined geographical line, and I didn't really understand that until I was much older, until I was an adult. So I guess I would consider that a benefit.
Okay, where does the majority of your work take place, and do you see a difference in those projects based on the country? Yeah,
when I work in the U.S., it's, I feel like a lot of the projects I do in the U.S. tend to be very commercial, which is not a bad thing at all. But I feel like when I go to Mexico to do a project, it's usually we're going there to do something special.
Something more meaningful.
Yeah, and it's just because of the location we need to get to, or the type of story we need to get to, or there's just there's always a reason why it's shooting in Mexico, because if it couldn't be shot in the U.S., there's a reason why it's shooting in Mexico, and people would say budget, but that's not really, that's kind of the afterthought. It's although it is important, it is a consideration. That's usually not the trigger.
Sure, yeah.
It's because there's this great location, or there's access to these great locations.
Something you couldn't get to.
Something you couldn't get
isn't
to.
Available in the US.
Yeah, there's a magic there they want to film, but the beauty is Mexico has amazing crew. You know, it is a film country. Mexico itself, as just its own country, exports so much, makes so much content for the rest of Latin America.
Yeah.
And then so much American stuff has been filming there for years and years and years.
Yeah, I was there recently with Sandra, like we were talking about, and the passion from the filmmakers down there is, it's underappreciated.
It's passion. People are cinephiles.
Yeah,
They really are. And it's funny because here people talk about the gear. And there people talk about the stories and the movies and the projects and the art of it, and like they're really passionate about it. And so that's, if I was to say what the difference was, it's about that. Like if you go to something here in the United States, like the gear always comes up often. And down there it's more about like the location, where it was, what was the story about, like, and I really enjoyed the difference in that. But it's the same thing in lots of other countries. It's nice being able to jump back and forth between the two.
Good.
You know?
Speaking of those projects, what is your primary criteria for choosing a project?
Ooh.
Or I guess even more importantly, do you have the luxury of choosing?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not easy. You know, sometimes it's a job, so you do need money, you do need work, and you're like, this is a project that will pay well or not. I have kids, so it's like, is it worth my time leaving for 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And it's like, okay, then am I doing it because I like the project? Am I investing in the team I'm working with? Because that's also equally as important as money. Like, do I like this director? Am I going to invest my time to build this relationship with this director or not? Or this producer or this production team or not? You know, that's equally as important, you know? It might not always be about this project. You always have to be thinking about, like, can I see myself working with this team this whole year and on to next year if things go well? Like, do I want to do that? Is it worth it? Or is this let's just knock it out, kick butt, get in and out.
Get the paycheck.
Get the paycheck and go.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. You know, it's not always about...
So it's a blend.
I can't say it's like, I'm so successful that I can just be picky. No, and very few people really are. You know? In fact, everybody who's successful at some point also just needs to pay bills. And sometimes you just get a project, you're like, that looks great, fits my schedule, seems cool enough. Everybody seems rad enough. Let's go knock it out and do it, you know? And while I'm there, let's try something new. You know, that's sometimes those money projects are great opportunities for you to work with the director and be like, you know we can do this. This project we can knock out with our eyes closed. Let's try something different.
Let's experiment.
Yeah, let's experiment. Let's try that weird funky set of lenses. Let's try that filter we saw that somebody used. Let's do that wacky camera movement and let's see if it'll work, because we're talking about maybe for the next project. Let's try it out on this one. And, you know, let's just see if it works or not.
Let's use this budget to try it for the next one.
You know, but isn't that what you should be doing? You should be trying to, like, push yourself.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like somebody's paying you to hone your craft.
Yeah.
You know, that's the beauty about, you know, being in the arts and being in cinema. And it's like every job you take, it's you're being paid to go be a better version of you, if you choose to.
I think some producers might disagree with that and think that maybe there's, you know, they hire a cinematographer because they know their craft. But I would say any cinematographer that thinks that they know everything and they've learned everything isn't doing what they should be doing.
No,
so yeah,
you should always be pushing yourself.
Yep,
or else that's where people get stagnant. That's where people get they cancel themselves out soon, because you're just doing the same look.
Yeah.
Regardless, it's always the same camera package, same set of lenses, same everything. There's nothing special about it. After a couple of years, people are just like, I want to try something different, and you get put on the shelf. You know, it's like you have to be evolving too, either with a trend or setting your own trend, or doing whatever it is you're doing. But you need to constantly be pushing yourself, whether it's with your looks, your lighting, your camera movement, or the technology you're using, the sensors and the lenses and different filter combos. There's just so many things out there. It's overwhelming as a DP.
How do you choose a lens, or do you have lenses that you would say are like your safety lenses, tried and true go-to, or what lenses would you pick if you want to try something new, something I'm sure you're here at a ZEISS event. You've obviously tried Supremes, Radiants, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Supremes as a contemporary lens right now. I think they really.
I like that term. That's a good way of putting it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. As what exists now, I really think that they are at the top of where it checks all my boxes. I like the size. I like the weight. It's not a giant, heavy kit of lenses, because you want to not have to be fighting your rig. Like, you don't want the camera package to be so heavy that you have to have a bigger tripod, have a bigger crane, have a bigger remote head, everything just gets bigger and bigger and heavier. And when you're like, quick, guys, let's just put the camera here. They're like, hold on, we gotta move all this stuff over there for you. And you're like,
so it's like they're everything you need, but nothing you don't need.
Well, things I like about them is the minimum focus.
Yep.
I find them, I was a big fan of Ultra Primes because of their size and weight. But then I found myself not really falling in love with the minimum focus on them.
Yeah.
So I was really fighting. I just got tired of always carrying a set of diopters with me. And it's like, it's fine, but it's like, well, I can't do that minimum focus to infinity rack for you. Like, we'll have to take it from here to like 6 feet. And then from there, I'm hoping we'll cut to the wide and then we'll cover it this way. So I liked that some of the Supremes, the minimum focus was pretty good. There's actually some of the best for that modern contemporary lens. But I'll be honest with you, the reason I really like them is that there's two big reasons I like them. And I repeat myself with everybody I talk to. Whenever somebody sees me shooting with them, they ask me, why these? Like, why not this? Why not that? And I tell everybody they're neutral. I can mold them into whatever I want. They don't have a heavy look. It doesn't mean they don't have a look. It means I can mold it. They're just neutral lenses. One of the things I do most of the time is I split my white balance on 90% of my shoots. I shoot at 4300 for everything. So my cools are cooler, my warms are warmer. So I like this because in real life, your eye doesn't white balance. You know, it's like there's so many different sources of color and light bouncing from everywhere in real life, and I feel my work feels more realistic because I let the tungsten be tungsten and I let the daylight be daylight. I don't make daylight artificial white balance and then the tungsten looks extra warm. Like, you know, it's like I split the difference. And I feel because of that, I'm not fighting this inherent warmth that other lenses have that I have to like pull out of, you know, sometimes, where everything feels warm and I have to light cooler to balance out of. Instead, I could start at a nice neutral 0, and then it lets me be able to paint how I want. So if I want to go warm for one scene or one section of a story or for a part of a project, I can. But then if I want to go cool right away or have it feel clean or have it, I could push it. It's malleable in so many ways.
There you go.
And that's what I really like. It's that there's no predetermined look for me.
It's not a look that's forced on you.
No, it isn't. And don't get me wrong, those other lenses that have looks, they're great.
But there's a time and a place.
The other thing I really, really fell in love with them, and I tested them a lot before using them on paid projects, was the focus fall off. That curve of the focus fall off.
You and I talked about that earlier.
Yeah, so I am huge fan of Master Primes. Huge fan. I love them. I think they're so artsy. They're so soft. They're so sharp and so that they're soft, if that makes any sense.
No.
they because you can shoot wide open, you can throw the world out so quickly. You can make this creamy world around
That's a good way to put it,
if you know how to control it, and if you have the budget to light at a certain stop where you are in command of them. If you can light everything at a 5, 6, 8, you are great. And then you ND down for those shallow depth of field wides. You can do all that stuff, and that's fantastic. But you have to really set up the environment for those Master Primes to thrive, or else
you get a sterile.
You don't get sterile. You get a very shallow very finite focus plane. And so you can see when projects are shot on master primes because you get to see what eyelash is in focus. Because they didn't have money to light, and they really are shooting them at a 1.4. And those are amazing on product. Those are amazing on a specific commercial where you're trying to highlight one specific object. But people trying to do narrative on them, wide open.
It's too much.
It's one, you're gonna kill your AC, and you're gonna kill your actors, because if they don't hit their marks, if this doesn't happen, if that doesn't happen, the take isn't in focus. You know?
Yeah. And at that point, it's not just an artistic decision. Now you're costing the production money.
Yeah, and it's like nobody wants to put everybody through that 3 times. You know? It's just horrible. You know, ideally everybody just killed it and we move on. You know, and it's awesome. Let's go. And one of the things I liked about the Supremes was, I feel like the focus fall off on master primes is like this, sharp, and then it's like sheer cliff. You know, it's like you can almost see like the wall of focus moving through the lens. Like if you just rack focus on a master prime, you could just see focus coming and going. Like you could pick.
Compared to the Supreme, where
and
it
the
might
Supremes,
appear a little more
it feels
gradual.
like it's more gradual, and I feel like they designed it, because I didn't talk to any of the lens designers on the Supreme, so I don't know. But I feel like it's designed around a face. Like I feel like when I frame a face up with a Supreme, it feels like they're in focus, and even the objects that aren't in focus, they're not distracting me out of focus. Like even if wide open, the eyes are sharp, their ears are falling out of focus, but they're not a mound of blur like you would in some other, not even master primes, a lot of these other modern lenses that are coming out of various vendors. They're just so sharp.
No names.
And then non-sharp. You know, it's just this like...
It's either in or out.
It's you're in or you're out. And it's like, I feel like the Supremes have this like
we talked about
curve.
that earlier, and I really want you to elaborate on, to some degree, what we had talked about with the fact that the Supremes are...
They're made for faces. It feels like they're made for faces. And
you could say that. It's a very difficult thing to explain, but they're just a more gentle lens. I think it might be an okay way of describing
They're actually a forgiving lens.
Sure.
And one of the reasons I like them, like I've been doing a bunch of documentaries with older celebrities, people like old actresses, and you want them to look amazing. So you want something that is going to look great on a big screen. You want it to have that crispness, but you don't want it to feel sharpened.
Yeah.
You want it to resolve. You want to see detail. You want to see their eyes. You want to see when the tear rolls down. Like you want to feel it. You want it to feel sharp enough where people will connect to them. When they see those eyes, they connect to them. They could feel a connection between them. But you also don't want to see the imperfections in the skin. You also don't want to see the makeup application. You also, you know, so it's like, and I also needed lenses that I could put against high contrast backs. So like out a window. A lot of people are really proud of this like house they bought in their prime, and it has a gorgeous view, and they're like, oh, I really just want to be interviewed sitting, you know, on the deck, and you're like, oh God, and with this hugely bright background. But I know I can do it, and it's not gonna wash out. I know the contrast, the micro contrast, all that stuff will hold.
Or you're not going to be flooded with chromatic aberration.
There's absolutely no chromatic aberration. I mean, all lenses have chromatic aberration. They're not perfect, nor do they need to be. But I feel that they're just so forgiving in so many ways. I don't have to think about them. Like I don't have to work for the lenses. You know, and you know what working for the lenses is if you've ever shot anamorphic. You know?
Okay.
You know, like you're like, oh, we can't do it with that one. We got to do it with this one because of the distortion or the minimum focus or this or that. And you're like, this one has a sweet spot, or that one flare is really heavy. Like the worst thing is you're like, this is great, and it's just like, there's a flare around their face, and you're like, I can't flag it from anywhere, and it's just like, let's just go one up on the lenses. You know, just go back, and it just is what it is, you know. And it's like it is what it is, but it's like I find myself doing that less and less with Supremes.
Okay, so
and I filter them. Sometimes I do different applications of different filters and stuff like that. Like my personal favorite right now is Supremes with half glimmer glass. It's just cool. I like it.
Okay.
It's just, I love the bloomy flares. I love the little ting that it adds to it. It's just a little something, and I love it when the actresses look inside and they're like, why is your camera shiny? You know, like.
I think everyone should at least try a glimmer glass once in a while. Even if you don't think you like it, just try it. It's probably going to be nice.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's just a little, and you know, and I eased my way up into it because I was like, oh, I don't know, half. Let's just start with like an eighth. So
Yeah.
like I did like
Half is
many
a-
projects with like an eighth glimmer glass,
That's
and
a bit
everyone's
much,
like,
yeah.
really? I'm like, yeah, it's good. And then like I slowly eased my way up into like softer flares. But
There you go.
But overall, that's what I like about them. And they are my go-to lens. If they want it to be super crispy and amazing, then I shoot wide open and I give them that like full frame feel, because I'm a big believer of full frame. I've been shooting full frame since the Monstro first came out.
Okay. That was
But
the onslaught.
5-6 years.
Yeah.
It's more than 6 years. Yeah, they were one of my first go-tos. That and the Tokinas.
Okay.
The Tokinas are special in their own right. They're like in an other ethereal category of lenses.
Yeah. So some of your award-winning work, tell us about some of those projects and how you chose the lenses for those.
So the last two things I shot that did pretty well were the Lucy and Desi documentary with Amy Poehler which is the biodoc on Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. And we shot that on Venice and Supremes. And
Nice.
that was a lovely combo. It was, the image was inviting. It felt very natural. You know, we tried to light it with a very natural look. We definitely had a bunch of actresses that gave me their lighting plots from like 1984 or like 1992. They were like, I usually have like a 2K Nook down here, and you're like, honey, that's not gonna happen. It's like a 5K pushing through a box. I was like, no, we're shooting you at the Roosevelt Hotel. That's not going to happen, you know. And they were amazing, and I really, really fell in love with that combo. I thought everybody just looked good, felt really natural, and I was quite happy with that. For that, we got nominated. I didn't win any cinematography awards, but that got nominated for seven Emmys.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool.
Nice. And then what was the other one? It was North Star?
And then North Star was a short film we did. We won 50 plus film festivals, which was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
A few cinematography awards for that, and that was Supremes with Mini LF.
Okay.
And the reason I went with that combo was we wanted to be really small, lightweight. It was an indie short film. We had some really beautiful dusk and dawn shots, and I knew I can do them really well with the lenses and that sensor at the time. A lot of mixed skin tones, once again, natural lighting. And yeah, those went really well. All those you can see online; they're all available. So please, I think Lucy and Desi's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And then North Star is on. It's released on YouTube, so you can.
That one's on YouTube. Okay.
Mhm.
What other projects do you have in the pipe?
I have next week. I have a one-take feature film that's premiering at Cannes.
That's the one you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so that was all. That's a 90-minute single
One
take.
shot.
One shot. We rehearsed for 3 days, and then that was just blocking. A lot
Which
of just
means-
like walking around with an iPhone, and just like, let's run the lines. Okay, cool. This does not work, guys. It's like, you guys need to go over there. You need to go over there. That way I get a nice frame. Okay, but from here, where are we gonna go? Okay, you're gonna enter here. You're gonna disappear here. You know. And it's just like blocking for shadows, blocking for camera shadows, blocking for that way people naturally land and line up in a way. And we were doing things where we were writing a variable ND and an iris. So depending on where we were it's mostly around. It's a big house we shot in, and so it's going upstairs, downstairs, outside, on the deck, coming back in through the kitchen, through like all these environments, and we were writing. Not just the ND for exposure, but we were writing the f-stop for depth of field. Because sometimes
to change that feeling.
Yeah, because that's I mean, creatively, you needed to sometimes. It's a thriller, so when we were on his face and the world is falling apart around him, like you want to be wide open, right?
You want that super shallow.
Yeah, you want to feel that separation between the world and him, this loneliness, this isolation. You want to really do that. But when there's a conversation with him and his daughter, or his daughter and her friends, and it's like, I don't want the focus puller because people miss their marks to be like hunting. So all of a sudden we'd gradually pull, and all of a sudden we'd be at an 8. You know,
as like a safety, but also to set the scene.
It's also not a safety. It's like, why do I need to choose who's talking? Like, you don't want me to tell you who to look at as they're talking. Everybody's in focus. So now you're in the conversation. Now you're in the room with everybody. Now you could see everybody talk, and you could see their reaction and what he's talking, and the way they're throwing shade over here with their reaction over there, and then that just felt more natural to me because we ran it wide open once, and I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Like this is it's actually just the camera is I can feel the camera. It's distracting. You know?
So when you have a 90-minute oneer, did you pick the lens up front and stick with it?
Yeah.
And then have to like adjust?
Yes.
Okay. So you never throughout the planning, like maybe we need to use the 35. What focal length was it?
It was a 47 mil, and we.
Okay.
Yeah, 47 mil, and we shot 2-to-1 on a Monstro.
Okay.
So
at no point we're like, we need something wider.
No, because if you go wider, then you find yourself having to walk in closer for close-ups.
Okay.
And then you have the camera
There's
shadow
more
issue.
stuff in frame,
and then,
more stuff you have to control.
Yeah, and then and sound and all this, and then a longer lens, you are also you're too far away for group shots. So when there's 3, 4, 5 people in a room, you are now choosing everybody. And once again, you're dictating what the audience should be looking at. Obviously, we do want to do that, but we want to be very selective about it. We don't want to have the whole movie like that also.
So you picked the lens and then
I plotted
everything around.
Yeah, for 3 days I blocked
focal
everything
length.
around it. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so, and it worked. And it worked because it was also like, well, let's run the scene and like, where would you land? Like instead of doing that, what if you lean up against the couch? Or why don't you like why don't you just like, as most people do, they go into a living room like, sit down, lean against the window seat, you know, do this or that, and people are like, oh, okay, like you don't have to be standing there ready to deliver your lines, you know, like let's get comfortable for a minute because we're going to be here for
90 minutes.
Well, I mean, it's moving, but it's like, you know, you land somewhere and it's like, cool, we're going to be here for 15 pages.
Okay.
You know, so it's like. I need at some point I need to motivate you getting up over here. So as you cross here, we pick up his line, then we come over here. We also need to set it up so that the camera's dynamic and we're not just standing in one place.
Right.
So it's like, this is a great opportunity for you to walk over here, make contact with them, and then they start looking at them, and then we come back over here. And now the camera's motivated to be moving in different places instead of just doing this.
So what is that project called?
And that one's called Failure. And
Failure.
That's with Ted Raimi.
When is that coming out? When and where?
I don't know.
Okay.
It just got its premiere. We just found out it's premiering at Cannes last week.
So it's in the festival around.
Yeah, it's in the festival. So
okay, gotcha.
That'll be cool. And then I have Stan Lee, The Life and Times of Stan Lee, coming out for Disney Plus.
Nice.
And that comes out June 16th.
That's Stan Lee.
Stan Lee.
Not Stanley.
Yes, well, it is actually Stan Lee, and he made his name Stan Lee.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. What was, I hate to sound repetitive, lenses for that one?
Arri macros.
Okay.
The whole job.
Interesting choice.
The Arri ZEISS macros are the 16, the 24, and the 40.
Okay.
Macros. They're beautiful, amazing, delicious glass that focuses down to within the front barrel.
Yep. Yeah. Technical, very, very technical lenses.
They have so much soul, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually shoot at that 40. I shoot with it all the time. All the time. It's like a slightly more modern version of a super speed. Like it's like half the flare, but it still has those same, because I think it's the same coatings. They're like T coating ish. I don't think they evolved very much.
I think that's what ZEISS called T coating ish.
Yeah. T coating plus with the asterisk.
Yeah, there. Asterisk.
Yeah. But I find them really pretty. They have those old beautiful teardrop flares, and they have a vintagey feel. Which I like that old ZEISS coating look, you know, like I really like those flares that existed, you know, and you can't make that with modern glass, at least not, I haven't found it. And nor do you need to? No, I mean, you don't need to.
No, that's why the area
that's the
macros
era,
are special.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, let them remain special.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what's happening in lenses right now, right? Where it's like, people are like, I want that look, nobody's making. Well, let's go back to the ones that actually had the look, and you're rehousing old lenses, you know?
Yep.
Which is kind of cool that all this great glass we all knew already existed is kind of coming back
Getting a
up.
second life.
Yeah.
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 Last question, which is a super vague one. What would you say is your one piece of advice for a aspiring cinematographer?
You know, a producer once told me, and I took it really to heart, and they're like, you know, I'm really glad you're available. I want you on this job. And it's like, oh, cool, we're going to do great. He's like, I kind of just want you on the job because I like hanging out with you. Like, we're going to be doing a really difficult job for the next few weeks. We're going to be in some really bad positions. Like, I just know you're not going to lose your head. You know, you're going to deliver something, because at the budget we're paying you, we could hire anybody, right, that we want. Like, there's the scope of people that are available at that budget is pretty decent, you know,
Yeah.
and any of them would deliver this job. But it's like, but I know you will have fun doing it with me. And it's like, oh, it's like, and I really took that to heart, because it's not just like, can you just be like the most badass person or the badass cinematographer? It's like, you can be like, no matter what I do, I'm going to make it amazing, and it's always going to be for the, like, you know, some people shoot for the real. It's like,
But you still have to be a good person.
yeah, but you don't always have to shoot for the real, you know? So it's like, that's the balance of a lot of things, but it's like, you have to also enjoy what you're doing so that people have fun working with you.
Yeah.
And you can't lose sight of that.
I think that goes back to what you said before. It's a collaborative process.
It's a collaborative process.
Can't just do it in a vacuum.
And we all know how horrible it could be if you don't get along with somebody on set, or you just don't vibe with somebody, or it's the worst. You're like, I don't want to be on this job anymore. Why did I do this?
Yeah.
And you're like, but I'm stuck here for a while, and I have to deliver, because that's my job. In the end, I have to deliver what I got hired to do, because it's still a job, right? So I have to put everything aside and get all the shots on the shot list, shoot out those boards, you know, make sure the client or the producer or the studio or whatever goes home happy. Like, I still have to do it, but it can be miserable.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't want that. You really don't want that. But so it's about surrounding yourself with good people. And when you see somebody, you find somebody you work really well with, you know, invest in that relationship.
There you go.
You know?
That's probably the keeper there. Invest in the relationship.
Yeah, because it's all about who you know, and if you find somebody that does cool stuff and they like how you work, and you guys just harmonize, both as people and as creatives, it's amazing. Like, it's not work at that point. You're just hanging out, making pretty pictures, or like making good music, you know? It's like you're just jamming out.
Nice.
And it's just, days go by real quick.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions we had.
Cool.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.